Hello everyone and welcome. In this video I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on Y: The Last Man Season 1 Episode 4. As is the norm with all my videos, I won't be holding back on any spoilers, so please do keep that in mind. Anyway, without further ado, let's begin. It's fair to say that the first 3 episodes of Y: The Last Man didn't exactly blow me away, and neither does episode 4. However, I do like this episode a lot more than the previous 2 installments. I mean, for one thing, this episode actually has action sequences which help break up the monotony, and although I feel like this show still needs to do a lot more to convince me that it's worth watching, all things said and done, you know what, this episode is okay. It's not spectacular, it's not a groundbreaking watch by any stretch of the imagination, but you know what, it's alright. The episode begins with Yorick and 355 camping in the woods. 355 goes off to hunt for some food, and while she's hunting for food, she hears a noise coming back from the campsite, and then she goes back to the campsite and she finds these 2 women there who are trying to steal hers and Yorick's supplies. 355 tries to defuse the situation, at which point the idiot Yorick appears. He comes out with his gas mask on and he's holding like a log of wood, and he chases these women like an absolute madman, and they run off. And I mean, I guess you can say, well, it worked, he did get rid of these ladies, but at the same time, you know, Yorick shouldn't be doing this. He shouldn't be putting himself in danger because, you know, he's so important, he's the last man left who can reproduce, and yeah, he shouldn't be doing that. But you know what? I found it hilarious. It was dumb, but I thought it was really funny, and it actually reminded me a lot of the comics, because in the comics, Yorick is so hot-headed and he's always running headfirst into danger without thinking about it. So it's nice that they've been able to kind of translate that from the comics to the TV show. So yeah, I like this scene. Yorick and 355 leave the camp and they go to some kind of market in order to try to obtain some transport. Whilst they're there, they spot a bike, and then 355 successfully manages to negotiate for it. And like in the comics and the TV show, motorcycles are also heavily sought after. However, I'm not really sure why the protagonist had to go to such lengths in order to get a vehicle. I would have thought that with all the men dead, there'd be plenty of cars lying around, because according to this website, in 2020, 55% of cars in the US were owned by men. And with all the men dead, wouldn't there just be loads of cars lying around that they could just hotwire and then use? So I don't really understand why vehicles are so hard to find in the world of Y: The Last Man. I mean, perhaps the vehicles themselves aren't the problem. Perhaps it's because all the men have died. Now there isn't men working on oil rigs and there's a staff shortage, and maybe they can't get the fuel, and maybe there are cars but you just can't use them. I don't know, but I just kind of wish that this was explained a bit more in the TV show. Anyway, Yorick thinks that he sees his girlfriend Beth at this market, so he goes and follows this lady who he thinks is her, and then this takes him to the underground part of the market, at which point he's surrounded by these, I think they are wives of now deceased policemen, and these women are like running a protection racket on this market, and yeah, they all surround him and basically kick the shit out of him because they say that he's not supposed to be there. Then 355 appears and she kicks their ass, and she tells Yorick to run and, you know, to get away, and then the pair run through the market whilst these women are trying to shoot them, and then they manage to escape on the bike. And I mean, it's not a spectacular action sequence by any stretch of the imagination, but at least it was something exciting happening in the show. At least now we've got fight scenes, and you know, we've got guns, we've got people running away. It was much needed after the last 2 episodes, in my opinion. And I also like seeing what Agent 355 is capable of. You know, I thought it was really cool seeing her fight these women and take them all down by herself, and yeah, that was good, I suppose. Yorick and 355 make it back to safety, at which point Yorick says that they need to go back because he left his phone there and he wants to play some Candy Crush. Okay, that last bit I did make up, but Yorick does want to go back because he's left his phone, and as predicted, this causes 355 to lose her shit. She basically tells Yorick that he needs to stop messing around and he needs to take it seriously, to stop being a child basically. And yeah, I really like this scene, and I like this argument because I can actually see both of these characters' points of view. I think it's quite easy in this moment to write off Yorick as being extremely selfish and, you know, being really stupid for saying that he wants to go back for something like a phone. But let's not forget, in the beginning of The Walking Dead, when Rick goes back to his home, he finds that all his photo albums are missing, and that's because Laurie's taken them. And, you know, in that show, the world's gone to shit, people are dying, zombies are everywhere, yet she still felt the need to pack her family photos, and people like holding on to their photos. They're important to them. So I can understand why Yorick wanted to go back to his phone, because it has videos and pictures of his girlfriend on it. However, I can also understand why 355 is pissed off at having to babysit what she sees as an entitled man-child who isn't taking his job seriously. So I like this confrontation. I like the pairing of Yorick and 355. I like the fact that in this episode their relationship actually was allowed to develop and allowed to grow, because at the end of the episode Yorick apologizes and 355 seems to forgive him, and it looks like maybe we're witnessing the start of a friendship. And yeah, I like that. I thought that stuff was good. The other part of this episode focuses on Hero, and my god, is she she irritating. So Hiro and Sammy decide to stay the night in some kind of abandoned building, or at least they think it's abandoned, and they find a car there, and Sammy says that they can use that the next day to travel to see Hiro's mum, but Hiro doesn't want to see her mum. She makes that pretty clear, and while Sammy is sleeping, she sabotages the car so that it doesn't work, so that they can't travel the next day, which is a total dick move in my opinion. Part of me is glad that the TV show is giving us more of Hiro at this point in the story than the comics did, because hopefully this will allow us to learn more about her and she'll be, a much more well-rounded, more interesting character. But the other part of me kind of wishes that we weren't watching her, because I struggle really to like her. I'm finding her really irritating. Anyway, Hiro bumps into Mackenzie, who is Nora's kid. Nora appears with an axe, but quickly drops it after Sammy and Hiro say that they can basically help her because Hiro's a nurse. And I'm not really sure what the purpose of Nora's character is at this point in time, because I don't think she and Mackenzie are in the comics, and she's just kind of been there in the TV show. I don't really know why she is here, but with her joining up with Hiro and Sammy, hopefully now she actually gets a story arc and we find out, why she's here. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see how that develops. Anyway, long story short, it turns out the building they were staying in wasn't abandoned. It's some kind of women's refuge for victims of domestic violence. These women come home and then they want to kill all the protagonists, and I'm not entirely sure why. I mean, I can understand why they want to kill Sammy, because they've all been abused by men and they all hate men, as evidenced by one of them saying to him, "Why on earth would you choose to be a man?" which is a pretty horrible thing to say to someone, but again, it also shows how much they detest men. So I can understand their hatred towards him, but I don't know what Hiro and Nora did to deserve them wanting to kill them, but I don't know. Hiro does manage to convince them not to kill them, because she says that she's a doctor and she can help one of their friends who she heard is injured. Or actually, maybe Nora says that and says that Hiro is the doctor who can help them. I don't know. But anyway, they convince them to keep them alive, at which point Hiro has to operate on this person who's been shot, on this lady who's been shot. Hiro does her best to help the lady, but obviously she doesn't have the right equipment, and she's not actually a doctor, she's just a nurse. And then the leader of this group of women comes in and basically shoots the women dead on the table, which isn't something that I was expecting. It kind of reminded me of Fear the Walking Dead, when Chris was hanging around with those assholes who, as soon as someone was injured, they put them down because they saw them as a burden. So if someone broke their leg, or for example, they just shoot them rather than helping them, because they just thought they were a burden and didn't want to carry them with them. So yeah, it reminded me of that. It was unexpected. I like that. Maybe now we've actually got an antagonist in this show. Maybe this woman is going to be the antagonist. So at least, again, that's something interesting that happened. Boss Lady allows Nora, Mackenzie, Hiro and Sammy to stay with them, and the episode ends with Hiro going into like this warehouse section of their building, and it's full of food, it's full of supplies, and obviously because Hiro doesn't want to go see her mum anyway, I think she's now going to try and convince the group to stay with these women. So yeah, it's an interesting point to end things on. Like I said, it feels like maybe now we've finally got an antagonist. We're seeing characters interact with other groups of people, and yeah, finally it feels like maybe the show is starting to get somewhere. I also think that I prefer this episode to the last two, because it doesn't feature Jennifer Brown, and I've said that I find her and her politicians to be quite boring, and lo and behold, she's not in this episode, and I thought it was okay, but I don't know, I'm guessing she's going to come back in the future. But yeah, give me more of this. Give me more of this. This was okay. I still think that the pacing is too slow for the show at the moment, especially compared to the comics. I mean, I understand that comics are always a lot quicker than the TV shows, but I do think they do need to speed it up a bit, but it seems to be heading in the right direction. This was an okay episode. It's better than the last two, and I'm hoping that next week gets better. So let me know what your thoughts are below. If you've watched Y: The Last Man, do you like this episode? Do you dislike it? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you all soon. Goodbye.